August 1986, the hills above Berkeley, California. In a laboratory built to study the universe, an astronomer is staring at the smallest number of his career, 75 cents. The lab's computers bill scientists for every second of processing time, and tonight, 2 accounting programs disagree by 75 cents. Somebody used 9 seconds of computer time, and nobody paid for it. He could round it off, write it down to a glitch. Almost anyone would. Instead, he pulls the thread, and the thread keeps going. Through hundreds of military computers across the Atlantic, through a hole in the Berlin Wall, all the way to the KGB. Before it ends, one of the spies it leads to will be found dead in a German forest, burnt beyond recognition. How does a rounding error catch a spy ring? It starts with a man who refused to round up. The man is Cliff Stoll. He's not a security expert. There barely is such a thing in 1986. He's an astronomer whose grant money ran out, so Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory moved him down the hill, from the telescopes to the computer center. He's the new guy. The new guy gets the chores. Chore number 1, find the 75 cents. Understand what the network is like in 1986. A few thousand computers, mostly universities, labs, and military, wired together in a spirit of almost total trust. No firewalls, passwords are a courtesy. It is a small town where nobody locks their doors. Stoll digs into the billing records and finds the 9 seconds. They belong to a user called Hunter. He goes looking for the paperwork. Every account at the lab belongs to a real scientist with real budget. Hunter has no paperwork, no budget, no owner. Someone created an account inside the lab's computers, and whoever it was, they didn't come through the front door. Days later, a message arrives from a secure computer facility in Maryland. Someone from Berkeley has been rattling its locks, trying to break in. The account they used belongs to Joe Sventek, a respected Berkeley systems scientist. One problem: Joe Sventek is in England. He's been there for months with no access to the lab's machines. Stoll takes it to his boss. The boss is unimpressed. A billing error and a borrowed account. That's not an intruder, that's sloppy bookkeeping. He wants proof. So Stoll studies the wiring. A technician's traffic logs shows the ghost arriving on a 1200 baud line. That's painfully slow. The speed of an outside phone call, not a campus connection. Whoever Hunter is, he's dialing in from somewhere out there through one of about 50 incoming phone lines. Which one? There's only one way to know. Watch all 50 at once. Friday night, Stoll raids the lab for every printer, teletype, and portable terminal he can borrow. About 50 machines in total. He drags them down to the basement and physically wires one to each incoming phone line. If the ghost dials in, one of these machines will print every keystroke that he types. This is the part nobody tells you about the birth of cybersecurity. It looked like a man in a sleeping bag under a desk surrounded by humming teleprinters, waiting. He doesn't wait long. One machine stirs, then it types. Stoll watches a stranger walk through his computer, keystroke by keystroke, live on paper. Because the tap is on the phone line itself, outside the computer, the intruder can't see it. From inside, nothing is wrong. The watcher is invisible. Over the coming months, that wall of printers will produce a mountain of paper. One session alone runs to 80 feet of printout. And what's on the paper is what changes everything. This is no joyrider. This is a professional with a method and a shopping list. The printouts show how he got in. A popular text editor of the era had a mail feature with a flaw. It let a user move a file anywhere on the system. The intruder used it to swap out one of his own files in place of a routine system task. Then he just waited for the computer to run it, with full administrative privileges. Stoll reached for an image from biology, the cuckoo. It doesn't raise its own chick. It lays its eggs in another bird's nest and lets the victim hatch it. The intruder laid his egg, and Berkeley's own computer hatched it. Now he owned the nest. But the lab itself was never the prize. Watching what he searches for night after night, nuclear, SDI, Star Wars, the Missile Defense Program, NORAD, and KH-11, the codename of America's photo reconnaissance satellite. This isn't curiosity. He isn't exploring. He's shopping. Berkeley was a doorway. Through it, the intruder stepped into MILNET, the Pentagon's unclassified network, and went hunting. Over 10 months, Stoll watched him attack roughly 450 computers and walk into more than 30. Army bases, Navy facilities, defense contractors, an Army depot in Alabama, Ramstein Air Base in Germany, Fort Buckner in Okinawa, a Pentagon database, MIT, even the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And here's the part that should have ended the Cold War's sense of security. He rarely needed to be brilliant. On about 1 machine in 20, the factory default passwords still worked. The keys were in the ignition. Where they weren't, he copied each system's scrambled password file and cracked it at home, testing dictionary words one by one. It wasn't harmless. So Stoll became a guardian angel with a dirty trick. Whenever the intruder closed in on something truly sensitive, Stoll fed static into the line, fake noise, dissolving the download into garbage. To the intruder, America's most sensitive networks just seemed to have terrible phone lines. Stoll did what citizens were supposed to do. He called. The FBI asked the only question it had a box for: how much money was stolen? 75 cents. They hung up. No $1 million loss, no classified breach, no case. He briefed the CIA, the NSA, Air Force investigators. Everyone leaned in, fascinated. Then everyone explained why it wasn't their jurisdiction. In 1986, breaking into a military computer through a phone line fell into a legal gap. The crime was so new it didn't have an owner. So the astronomer kept his own case file, a handwritten logbook, every session, every target, every clue. What he couldn't know, 5,000 miles away, the man on his printers had something the FBI lacked entirely: a paying customer. According to the West German prosecutors, and the trial reporting that followed, it begins in 1986 when a former casino croupier named Peter Karl walks into the Soviet Trade Commission in East Berlin with a business proposal. He knows people in the West German hacker scene, people who can get inside American computers. For the right price, what they find can belong to Moscow. The KGB assigns the group a contact they know as Sergei. Reporting from the case puts the first payment at 30,000 Deutschmarks, split between the members. The talent is in Hanover. Marcus Hess, online alias Ermel, a skilled young programmer. It's his late-night sessions that are pouring out of Stoll's printers. Dirk Berinsky, a systems expert, and the Ring's strangest soul, Karl Koch. Koch calls himself Hagbard Selim, after the hero of a conspiracy novel he treats like scripture. He burned through an inheritance on cocaine and computers, and he's obsessed, truly obsessed, with the number 23. Remember that. A Berlin hacker called Pengo would later admit he too worked with the Ring. The merchandise flows east, and in Berkeley, Cliff Stoll's 75 cents is now an international espionage case that officially doesn't exist. Catching him meant tracing him, and tracing him was a relay race run backwards at 1200 baud. Connection entered through TimeNet, a public data network. TimeNet's engineers traced it to a dial-up port in Oakland. A court order traced Oakland to something stranger, a defense contractor in McLean, Virginia, whose modem pool the intruder had hijacked as a free long-distance service. The contractor's phone bills told the story. Hundreds of one-minute calls probing military bases across America, one after the other, like a burglar testing every door on the street. When that door slammed shut, he came back another way, and this time, the trace crossed the ocean. The addresses pointed to West Germany, University in Bremen, the German data network, a satellite link over the Atlantic. The final leg belonged to the Deutsche Bundespost, a German post office, whose aging telephone exchanges had to be traced by hand, a technician physically walking the racks of clattering switches while the call was still live. They needed an hour. The intruder never stayed connected longer than a few minutes. Careful, disciplined, untraceable, unless someone could give him a reason to stay. The answer came from Stoll's girlfriend, Martha, a Berkeley law student. If he hangs up too fast, make him want to stay. Together, they invented a government program that never existed, SDI-Net, a fake Strategic Defense Initiative office supposedly run out of Berkeley, staffed by a warm, helpful, completely imaginary secretary named Barbara Sherwin. They filled its files with the most powerful sedative known to man, bureaucracy. Budget requests, travel vouchers, form letters, meeting minutes, megabytes of magnificent official-sounding nothing. To you, it's paperwork. To a spy, it smells exactly like Star Wars. In January 1987, the intruder found SDI-Net, and he stayed. He read fake memos for over an hour, while link by link, country by country, the trace closed. TimeNet to Virginia, Virginia to Bremen, Bremen to Hanover. The Bundespost technicians walked the final switches and stopped at a single phone line, at a single address, in a single apartment in Hanover. That night, Berkeley celebrated with strawberry milkshakes, the strawberries homegrown. The celebration was premature. Months later, a paper envelope arrives at the lab. It's addressed to Barbara Sherwin, the secretary who doesn't exist. The letter is signed by a man in Pittsburgh, Laszlo Balog, and it politely requests SDI-Net documents, including material the fake files had marked classified. Documents that have never existed anywhere on Earth except inside Stoll's trap. Sit with that. Exactly 2 people had ever seen those files, the man who wrote them and the man who stole them. Now the information had traveled from a hacker's screen in Germany to somewhere and come back as a written collection request mailed inside the United States. Investigators reportedly linked the letter's author to Eastern Bloc intelligence. He was never charged with any crime, but to the FBI, the meaning of the letter itself was unmistakable. Someone was checking the merchandise. The stolen goods had a buyer. The 75-cent error was now officially espionage, and the FBI, that once hung up on Cliff Stoll, took over his case. In June 1987, German authorities searched the Hanover apartment, at the end of the trace, home of Marcus Hess. But knowing and providing are different things. West German law barely fit the crime, the espionage evidence was thin, and the case stalled. For more than a year, the biggest hack in history sat in a drawer. The ring broke itself, Karl Koch sinking under drugs and paranoia, and the Berlin hacker Pingo walked into the authorities and confessed, under a West German amnesty law for espionage. Their statements lit up everything: the trade mission, Sergei, the deliveries, the money. On March 1st, 1989, Peter Karl was arrested at a Berlin airport, reportedly booked on a flight to Madrid. The next morning, police hit 14 homes across West Germany. That same evening, German television broke the story. Hackers working for the KGB, and reporters found the unlikely hero of the whole affair in Berkeley, California, a wild-haired astronomer who told them honestly, if the books had been off by $1,000, he'd never have noticed. It was the 75 cents that bothered him. Karl Koch never saw the trial. By 1989, he had cooperated with investigators completely. Officials later said, as the case stood, he had nothing to fear from prosecution. A political party office in Hanover had given him a fresh start as a courier driver. People were trying to help him. On May 23, 1989, he left at lunchtime in his employer's car. He didn't come back. 9 days later, police found the car beside a forest north of Hanover. Nearby, in a circle of scorched earth, lay a body burned beyond recognition, next to a melted gasoline can. The investigation ruled it a suicide. No note was ever found. His friends in the hacker scene never accepted that ruling. A cooperating witness in the KGB case, dead in the forest, and the questions have never fully gone away. But no evidence of murder has ever surfaced. What remains is the detail his friends can't stop repeating. Carl Koch organized his whole inner world around the number 23. He disappeared on the 23rd. He was 23 years old. The trial opened in Salé in early 1990, the first time anywhere that hackers stood trial for espionage. Cliff Stoll flew to Germany to testify against the man from his printouts. On February 15, 1990, the verdicts came down. Marcus Hess, guilty of espionage. Peter Carl, guilty. Dirk Brzezinski, guilty. The world's first convicted cyber spies. The sentence, 20 months, 2 years. Every one of them suspended. The judge concluded that no serious damage to West Germany had arisen. Reporters watched the three defendants smile at each other as it was read. Not one of them spent a day in prison. And maybe the court was reading the room. The Berlin Wall had fallen 3 months earlier. The superpower they'd sold their secrets to had less than 2 years to live. The judges were sentencing men for betraying a world that was already gone. Here's how new all of this was. When Stoll published his story, first as a research paper and then as a best-selling book, the NSA reviewed it in Cryptolog, the agency's own classified journal. Its pages stamped secret. Its readers sworn to silence. That review stayed locked in a vault for decades. It's been declassified and you're looking at it now. And at the top of the page, the National Security Agency got the book's title wrong. The Cuckoo's Nest. Even the people whose job this should have been were learning it from the astronomer. Everything Stoll improvised in that basement became the field's founding playbook. The patient monitoring, the logbook, the honeypot, invented at a kitchen table to keep a spy on the phone. The case is cited as history's first documented incident of state-sponsored cyber espionage, and it announced a truth every government now lives by. Wars would be fought through the wires. And the man who saw it first, he never built the empire he was owed. Cliff Stoll went back to teaching kids physics. Today, in his 70s, he hand-blows glass Klein bottles, mathematical curiosities with no inside or outside, and ships them from a crawlspace under his Oakland house, where the inventory is fetched by a homemade robot forklift. The user called Hunter turned out to be a spy ring. The hunt cost the KGB its first cyber operation, and it all balanced out to 75 cents. The KGB had to buy its secrets from hackers. The CIA found a better way. It secretly owned the company selling encryption machines to half the world's governments for 50 years. That story's next. Subscribe so you're here when it lands.